And now, here's Jeff Crilley.
Good Saturday morning, DFW. We have an awesome show. It's going to be a fast-paced show today, and we're going to start with a segment that I know that you'll be interested in, because giving back to the community has never been more cool, and often millennials will pick the company that they work for based on how generous that company is in terms of volunteerism and philanthropy. So my first guest is Sejal Desai. She is the program director for the Entrepreneurs for North Texas. That's part of the Communities Foundation of Texas. Welcome to the Jeff Crilley Show.
Thank you so much, Jeff. It's a pleasure to be on.
You've got a cool job, don't you?
I certainly do. Mm-hmm.
So tell me more about Entrepreneurs for North Texas.
Certainly. So the Entrepreneurs for North Texas, as you mentioned, is a program of the Communities Foundation of Texas, and we work with small to mid-sized companies and make it easy for them to give back in our community. We basically engage a group of these companies to come together to serve, to volunteer, to develop strategic, giving elements for them as well. And so it's just a wonderful way to provide a platform for these companies that want to create a culture of giving and service to provide that opportunity to them.
So if there's a CEO listening to this right now and they're saying to themselves, I know we should be doing more community service work, they come to you, and then what happens?
So typically what happens is that we work with these companies and, we bring them on into, it's a membership-based platform, and so they join us, and then we have an entire calendar of various community events that multiple companies come together and serve for. And the neat thing with that is that, you're not only, serving the community, but you're also networking while doing good, because you now have brought together this really engaged group of, committed volunteers to come together to give back to causes that they're passionate about. And typically, for CEOs also, there's a lot of individuals that really care about giving back to the community, but they're laser focused on building their business. Yes. And it's often hard for them to, find the time to put something together, or they may or may not have, the resources or know-how. And that's where we come in. We serve as that catalyst to make it easy for them to give back.
What are some common service projects or volunteer opportunities that you guys get into?
Sure, absolutely. So we every month we have 2 or 3 different what we call plug and plays, and this basically is an opportunity where we put together service events and multiple companies come together. In January, for example, every single MLK Junior Day we host a service project, actually 3 or 4 of them on the same day, where we go out and serve the homeless. So we work with the Stew Pot at the Bridge, Dallas Life, and multiple other nonprofits where we can go ahead and come together to serve the homeless. So we do that. Next week, actually on Monday, in time for Valentine's Day, we will be going to a senior home in partnership with Senior Source and bringing some Valentine's cheer to a lot of seniors in our community, playing bingo, bringing good treats to them as well. And so, every month we have a different flavor because we recognize different people have different passions. So around April, we will be doing things, in line with Earth Day. And so there will be a lot of environmentally friendly service projects as well.
Wow, that's really cool. I touched on it earlier in the show that for millennials, this new generation, it's really important, isn't it?
It really is. And so interestingly enough, I guess when maybe you or I were looking for jobs when we were younger, one of the first 2 or 3 questions we would have asked would not have been, what is your corporate social responsibility? What are you doing to give back? But we now get a lot of our companies, CEOs, HR folks that come to us and say, this is an increasingly important issue. Our, new recruits want to know what we're doing to give back in the community and how they might be able to engage using their company as a platform to do so. And so that, in a way, has clearly allowed for companies to, to do this and to really provide that opportunity. Most of our waking hours we are working. And so it's, I almost feel like it's incumbent on companies to provide that platform to give back. And millennials are surely leading the charge to make sure that happens.
I've always said that every generation seems to rebel against their parents. And so, the peace, love, generation of the 60s, gave birth to people like me. The 80s was my coming of age, and that was greed is good, Wall Street. And now my children, my daughter Sarah is here in the studio. She's 27, and I think we're back to kind of peace, love. Let's leave this planet better than when we we came here.
Absolutely. And I oftentimes, we hear a lot about kind of the millennial work ethic and all of that. And it kind of sometimes in a negative light, there's lots of workshops around all of that. But what I really see in this new generation, to be honest, is that they do see the world, very differently. They do not have the same kinds of, they don't have the same kind of lens through which they see, the way we see racial inequalities or we see differences. I just have a lot of hope because I think that generation is really going to change the way things are and hopefully keep us honest.
Talk about the bonding that happens in the field. I think, if a millennial is kind of used to the 9 to 5 at the office and then suddenly they're rolling up their sleeves and working in a park or feeding the homeless or something like that, just some magic happens, doesn't it?
It definitely does. And that's the most, special part about any kind of volunteer engagement. I do truly believe that it breaks barriers, not only between the volunteer and the client that they're serving, but really amongst team members and just the ability to kind of engage in a very different setting. It really brings out a different side to you. You get to know your colleagues, much better. We always talk about, how, somebody in marketing may not think too highly about so-and-so in accounting but now here you are, rolling up your sleeves and painting walls somewhere. And you also see a lot of situational leadership that happens in cases like this. And we really find that quite magical to see who really stands up to the occasion, how the team dynamics work. And honestly, we actually very recently did this project where we took a company out to work with the refugee community in Dallas that is actually just less than 2 miles from our office. And there were so many things that people don't know about the refugee community. They don't know that it's, they're actually the largest number of refugees are resettled not too far from the North Park Mall. And what it does when you go out and volunteer really is that you have a better appreciation for other people's lives, and that to me is very magical.
Well, I have a theory that if a company is all about the almighty dollar, that for some reason it doesn't have success. But if it's really built around principles and giving back and becoming part of the community, it has success. Do you agree?
I definitely agree because and again, we're all, if it's a for-profit making enterprise, that is important. You do have to respond and answer to your shareholders. Those are important elements to running a business, but fundamental values, that kind of make us who we are as human beings, is definitely very critical. And I think it makes for, you also build a very different kind of loyalty back to your company as well, not only from your employees, but also from your clients. People like doing business with good people and with good companies. And so, I think there is a lot to be said about that. And we find that in our network of companies that engage with us that, there's a lot of good work that gets done for the community, but internally, those members, really love to work with each other because they have the same fundamental values that they believe in.
Let's talk about what it does for the company's brand, because some famous examples: Ben and Jerry's, Tom's Shoes. What does it do for the brand of a company to be seen as being philanthropic?
And so, one of the things we do is we sort of work very strategically with these companies to kind of define, what they're passionate about, what the company, the management, but also what their employees are passionate about, and to the extent we can align their giving to that, to those values, the brand does stand out, right? And so there are some companies that can make it very strategic, like Tom's Shoes, you said, there's a 1-for-1 deal there. For all companies, you may not be able to do that. If you're a law firm, for example, you may not be able to, distinctly kind of have that value seen externally. But as much, if you can include that in your communication, if your clients are aware, if you engage your clients and your employees in doing that, it definitely does benefit the brand. And again, as I mentioned, people like doing business with, others that are kind of like-minded.
Absolutely. And you mentioned earlier that there's some networking that happens, that you have companies that work alongside each other. Talk about that.
Yeah, so we've, lots of examples of, many of our companies will actually come together. And interestingly enough, we will, host a volunteer event and then they will go to happy hour together. And, that's kind of a fun way for them to, again, give back. They've just painted, had a really cool experience doing that, but then they will go ahead and engage at a different level after that. And it's, when two CEOs come together and serve a meal to the homeless, they have had a very different bond than going to a networking event separately, together. And I think, that shared experience that you get from volunteering, does help significantly. And so we have seen a lot of business get done through the process as well. That's not something that we tout ourselves for. That's not what we put out there and say, okay, join us and you will find, this as a good business development tool. But we know that, there's people just enjoy working together.
I'm sure you've seen countless miracles happen. Do any stories come to mind, like when you think about, wow, I've got a really cool job. I just got to witness this, miracle happen. What comes to mind?
So I am very fortunate, actually, and one thing I really believe in, to be honest, is that if you're lucky enough to let your work be your passion, nothing like that. And so every day, when I wake up, I'm excited to get to work, and that truly is enjoyable. I see miracles happen in a lot of small ways. I mean, to me, every time somebody goes out and volunteers, there's something special that happens when you see a smile on somebody's face. I do remember distinctly one story that affected me quite personally. We were out at Minnie's Food Pantry, a pantry based in Plano that I just love, and we go out and serve there quite often. I was there last Friday and Saturday as well. But a few years ago, when I was out there with a team, one of the volunteers came down and sat next to me for a little bit and said, Sejal, I'm really thankful for this opportunity to volunteer. And I get that a lot. Generally people feel gratitude for just being able to come out and serve. But he was like, no, I'm really, really thankful for being able to do this because not too many years ago, I was, in a difficult situation myself. I'd lost my job. We weren't able to pay our bills. And I had to kind of put away my ego, and go and put my hand out at a pantry like this. And it was really tough for me as a husband and as a father to do that, but I had to feed my family. And but I was thankful at that time to have, pantries and organizations like this that serve us with dignity. And so now for me to kind of come back, and now he's, a senior general manager at a big organization, and life has come back around. But what that taught me was that the face of hunger is so different. And, we kind of have these preconceived notions about poverty and about what people, should look like if they're poor or otherwise. And that really just kind of brought to bear the fact that, it could be your neighbor. It could be somebody that, you don't think is suffering, but might be. And so that to me was a very special situation.
What a powerful segment. We're going to absolutely have to have you back again. Give us the website. How do people get involved?
Two things, EFNT.org, Entrepreneurs for North Texas. EFNT.org is what I do. And then our parent organization, the Communities Foundation of Texas, is cftexas.org. And, that's a public foundation that, puts on North Texas Giving Day. As you know, we collected $37+ million this past year. It's an exciting place to get connected. So either of those organizations, websites you can go to, and we'll be in touch.
Outstanding. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me, Jeff.